Welcome to the Berks County Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I am here with Sam Talarico, one of the members of the Berks County Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sam, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in music?
I'll start at the beginning.
Okay.
I was only maybe 6 years old, 7, when I realized how important music was to my spirit. I heard my family had a bar and grill, and they had 78s, and they played the Bluebird of Happiness with Jan Pierce, who was an opera singer, a tenor. And oh wow, I just got goose pimples thinking about that. It's the way music affects you. I get my hair stands up. And I remember when I heard that song, it just like I was surprised at how it affected me. It just really infected me, and it made me feel so good, and I didn't understand because I was just. And then I remember always asking them to put that on. I wanted to hear it again and again and again and again. And I listen to that today, and it takes me right back. So right then and there, I knew music was big medicine, is what I call it. So as I grew up, I used to listen to music all the time, and the music was coming out of New Orleans. The rock and roll back then, the best of it, was coming out of New Orleans with Fats Domino and all those great Ernie Cato and all those people. It was that Louisiana R&B, because back then you had white rock and roll and you had New Orleans, and the black was inspired by the black music, which was coming out in 1945, the jump blues. And then it went into like the Ink Spots and all that stuff, and then it was, and that's what I used to listen to all the time. That New Orleans rock and roll stuff. It was just infectious. And then Elvis came out, started taking the gospel music and the black music, and doing it, and he had some great hits, and I was listening to all that stuff. Sea Cruise was another great one, and how I got into singing was I wanted to learn how to play guitar, but it was really hard learning all the chords and having to learn all that stuff and then practice. It was a hell of a lot more fun singing harmony to the lead singer on the records. So while I was listening to the music, I was teaching myself. It was a game, and I didn't have to. It wasn't like I was practicing. I was singing, and I was singing harmony to the lead singer, and you'd get it, and you'd miss a note, and then you'd do it again, and then all of a sudden you perfected it. Now you were nailing it, and it was so much fun. I used to do that by myself all the time. It was a joy, and then I got really good at. I have a good ear. And I learned how to, the harmony it got to be so much fun. So, and I wasn't thinking about singing down the road, but I was singing for enjoyment. And I got damn good at it because I learned the harmony. I have a good ear. And I was listening to all that music growing up. And then...
Were you raised here in Berks County?
Yeah, I was born and raised at Mifflin and Chestnut. In Reading. I was born here, and I've always been in the Reading area. And then one of the turning points in the music was I was in 7th grade, I think it was, at Northwest Junior High, and we used to go across the street and have lunch at a little place. I forget what you call it, Wally's, or I forget what it was called. It's still there. And then Chuck Berry came out with Maybelline. Well, that was it. That took things to another level, and that was really, Bo Diddley and Little Richard agreed. Maybelline was the beginning of rock and roll. they both agreed on that. I heard an interview, and I'll tell you, oops, there it goes again, the goosebumps. I used to spend my lunch money over there, putting money in the jukebox, listening to Maybelline, and then I'd have to bum a bite of all my friends' sandwiches to get through the day. I remember doing that. That was so important to me until I started buying a lot of 45s. I had one of those little record players, and that was the start of it. And then I was getting a little older, and when I was about 16, back then, on a Friday and Saturday night, there were a lot of dances in Reading. St. Margaret's, the Y had them dances. Up in the coal regions, they had dances. It was a big deal. And so a lot of us Italian guys, we were real proud of being Italian, you know. Back in them days, the Untouchables were big on TV, right? So we would go to Sixth and Penn. Used to be Woolworths, I think, was at Sixth and Penn in Reading. And you would always find a couple of Italians standing on the corner singing doo-wop. So I started doing that. You have 4 or 5 guys standing on a corner, man. This is when it was really fun. Those days are long gone, but...
What year would that be?
That was 1959, 58, 59, 60. So everybody would meet before or after the dances, and people would cruise Penn Street. You'd go up Penn Street, down Cherry, up Penn, down Cherry, around the circle. Meantime, we were standing on a corner singing doo-wop. And that's what I started to do all the time. And a funny thing, you had John King in here. John King told me a story a few years ago that I wasn't aware of, because he's 7, 8 years younger than me. And he remembers coming up to Sixth and Penn when we were doo-wopping. And he wasn't old enough to come even hang out or come over. He was like intimidated because we were older. And he used to hide behind the cars and just to listen. He told me this story a while ago, and I said, boy, is that cool. I wasn't aware of it, but he used to hide behind the cars and listen to us guys singing doo-wop. Of course, then he grew up following that music, but he always told me that I kind of inspired him after I got Tally and the Hustlers later on, and he had his dance band. But, you know, he was 7 years behind me. But I remember that story was so cool that he remembered, and he used to hide behind the cars just to listen.
It's pretty cool.
You know what I mean? So back then, that's what was going on. And then the Pretenders formed at that time, 1959-60. Skip Peterbone started it with Mick Diana, Kenny Schott, and there was a lot of different guys, Al Coleman, Jerry Prentice, and then there were different guys. My cousin George DeCalla there were different guys coming in and out until the Pretenders actually formed as a group, and then we started singing all around Reading as a group, and then we recorded on the Al Stan and the Bethlehem label, and then we would play all over the place and sing.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Al Stan label?
Well, that was on Schuylkill Avenue, and here's my memory. What was his name that ran? He had a record. It was on Schuylkill Avenue, just up the street from Schuylkill Avenue in Buttonwood. It was a recording studio. Al Zanino. It was his recording studio. Now he had connections with someone up near Bethlehem, which was the Al Stan. There was they got together and shared some of the music. I don't know the ins and outs of all that, but we recorded in there the Ding Dong Bells, The Day You're Mine, some of those. And then it was on the Bethlehem label. It actually came out on the Al Stan label, and I don't know how all that, the workings of it. I was so young.
Sure.
I was just happy to sing and record, and I didn't know the business side of it. We never made a dime. I mean, it wasn't about that. It was
Sure.
just recording, and then Barry Petrie, with the I don't know if at that point if it was the Kingsmen or the Jet Set. I think it was the new Kingsmen maybe at that time, because they went through a series of. But he came in and backed us up on Ding Dong Bells. Kenny Schott was singing bass on that recording, and then I don't know whatever happened to him. I haven't seen him in a long time. Then later on, Al Coleman, he was then the bass player, a bass singer for a long period of time after that. But we recorded there, and Barry, we backed him up on Pretty Little Angels. He backed us up on Ding Dong Bells. And that's, it's hard to remember all the details of that time. My God, that was a long time ago. But we would play at all the dances and sing. We were singing all over the place. And then in 1962, there was a big rock and roll show. And I keep thinking, I can't remember, it was one of the DJs was involved in it, High Lit, or it might have been a High Lit, I'm not sure. It was a big rock and roll show. Little Anthony and the Imperials, the Shirelles, Freddie Boom Boom Cannon, Chubby Checker, the Chiffons, Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. This was a big rock and roll show. Was touring. We got to open the show.
Wow. Where was that?
That was at St. Mary's Church.
Wow.
And I forget what street that's on. It was at St. Mary's. And I'll never forget, we were backstage in Little Anthony's dressing room jamming with them. And Patti LaBelle, and I mean, it was like, wow. I mean, and we were just kids. Same goosebumps again. So that was a big time for us, and there was a lot of music going on back then. And then from there, we started getting requests to sing at a lot of places. But I still have the 8x10 glossies of Patti LaBelle, and everybody signed it, hanging in my studio.
That's neat.
That I had. I remember having that. But that's where it went. From there, I don't know what happened. We just started playing and singing at a lot of different places. And then around 1964, I started listening to I was listening to a lot of R&B. And then Stax came out. And that was it. I left the Pretenders, and I started up an R&B band, a funk band, a soul band, really, to cover Stax. And I started doing that, and it took me a while to get the right musicians, because I really wanted to get a crack, hot band and do something different. So I got one of the drummers from Barry's group, the Kingsmen, who he died a while ago. They lost a lot of good people lately, and but we started that band. 2 or 3, I see at least 3 of them died. I don't know what happened. Craig Schallenberger is still around. He was a bass player. The sax player died. Ed Sinaki. Frank Pepe was on trumpet. Norman Glembaki was on drums. I got him from Barry Petrie's band. And then he died a long time ago. So, and we rehearsed every night for months until we were really tight. And then we started to travel and do all the clubs around Reading and Harrisburg and Pottstown and Lebanon and everything. We played all the black clubs in Reading, the CP Club. And as far as I know, we're the only all-white band that ever played at the Grand Hotel. The Grand Hotel isn't there anymore, but that was a road. All the road bands used to play. If they were on the road from New York to Philadelphia, New Jersey, it was a paid day for them to play at the Grand Hotel. I mean, serious music was going on in there and all the time. And there was a Saturday afternoon matinee that was the best. And I was never old enough to be in there, but everybody knew me because I was a singer. And I was a white singer. But everybody knew me around town, so I never had a problem getting in the Grand Hotel. And then we eventually got to play there, which was a badge of honor for me, being the only white band that ever played there. It was as good as being at Woodstock. Those two things kind of mean a lot to me. That's how good we were. And we were a serious dance band. And then we moved on and went to, we were a house band in Atlantic City at the Crow's Nest. And it was a gay club, but there were two bands, La Tre Femme and Talia and the Hustlers. And there was three girls, singers, and two white guys, one an organ and a drummer. And the music never stopped. As soon as we started, I forget what time we actually started, and we would go till 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. So when one band was getting ready to take a break, they'd play a break song. We'd get up, get our instruments, and pick up the same song. They'd get off. The music never stopped from 7, 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was just crazy. That was so much fun. I remember Joe Tex came in one night, and we were doing all his music. I'm pretty sure he came in there one night. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, the place would just blow out because the bars would close in Philly. And they would all drive down to Atlantic City. And the walls would be bulging, and it would be insane. And we did that for the whole summer. Those were the days. So then when Talia and the Hustlers, we were from 64 to 68. And then, see, I was working at Dana Corporation. And I was hardly ever worked because I was always laid off in those early years, so I could travel. We were on the road. We backed up Patti LaBelle and not Patti LaBelle, Gladys Knight in Harrisburg. I opened the show, and then my band backed her up. That was down in Harrisburg. So we opened for some big name groups. I mean, we were at that level, Talia and the Hustlers, and a lot of people that are old enough remember that band. I mean, we were a badass band. It was a badass dance band. We had a horn section, and we had a Hammond B3 for a while. I mean, it was a kick-ass band. And that influenced John King, too. He talked about that because he was coming up behind me, and he did the same thing with John's King Dance Band, you know. So he was just coming up, so he remembers all that stuff. But then I got late. I had to go back to work, and it was the end of '68. I had to go back to work, so I had to leave the band. And the band was so good that they didn't want to disband. They called Bobby Newton. Bobby Newton came in front of the band after I left.
Oh, wow.
So this is how the history...
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're going to have Bobby in here today.
I know.
Yeah, that's great.
So, you know, that's how... This history needs to be told. I'm so glad that you're doing this. But that's how all of this music in Reading came about. Reading, some of the best music came out of Reading. I mean, some of great musicians came out of Reading.
Why is that? Why do you think Reading was such a hot spot? Is there a reason?
Reading was a socialist town back in those days, and it was wide open. You could play a number on any street corner. There was big time boxing in Reading. You know, people are so against socialism. I'm sorry. Socialism is good for the people. You know, it might not be good for the rich, but it's good for the people. Those days when socialism was run, we had a socialist mayor, and Reading was wide open. You could have a ball in Reading. And because of that, you had a lot of musicians coming in Reading. You had big time boxing. I mean, I met Muhammad Ali. I mean, I can't in my mind all of the old time big name boxers all came to Reading.
Wow.
You could meet them here. Up at 10th and Penn, across from the park, what the park used to be. They had boxing in there. Mm-hmm. Sonny Liston, I met him in there. I shook his hand, and it just wrapped around me. He was like a catcher's mitt, his hand. No wonder he hurt people when he hit him. His hand was huge. But I think that was part of it. Reading, you could have so much fun in Reading back in those days. And and it wasn't. Sure, there was a lot of illegal stuff going on, but the people were having fun. Mm-hmm. The music, the boxing, it was just loose. The music, the Calabria Club, that was one of the best places on Cherry between Second and Third.
I haven't heard of that one.
Oh yeah, the Calabria Club. Barry Petrie played there. They had like a Las Vegas show band. They were so good. Mm-hmm. And Billy Bowers is one of the best sax players ever. Billy Bowers, he played with the Jet Set and all them people, and then he went on. He's still playing. He played with Sam Bateras and Louis Prima out in Vegas. That's how good he is. And all that stuff came out of Reading. Great musicians. Wow. Yeah. So the Calabria Club was one of the upper places, quality places you could go. They had great bands in there. They had a dice game downstairs. Sinatra used to come to Reading to gamble.
Interesting.
And I got caught up in that one day because we were upstairs at the Calabria Club. My wife and I, we were just 17. I think she was 16. I was 17, maybe.
Wow. But
again, being a singer and a musician, I could go anywhere. I could get in. It was Reading was loose. Nobody asked for cards. So we were sitting there listening to I can't remember who was playing that night. But all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and I don't know if it was the ATF, what they were called then, but the cops came in. They raided the dice game downstairs, and then they came up to see what was going on up there. And they didn't arrest me. They sort of did. I think it was like because we were underage, so I had to go to court, and I really shouldn't tell all this stuff, so I won't. There's some stuff went on that was kind of. But I had to go to and testify against Funzy Comito, who was running the place. And of course, I wasn't drinking. I was drinking ginger ale. My girlfriend was pregnant. She wasn't drinking. I wasn't drinking. So I mean they never made anything of it, and it just went on. But that was one of the big deals. That was one of the best places in Reading. And then you had the Melody Bar. Which the photograph on that picture there was at the Melody Bar with the Pretenders. Yeah, that picture was taken at the Melody Bar when the Jet Set or the Kingsmen, I don't know which one they were at that time, were backing us up. Barry Petrie and Don Walker, who just passed, he was playing keyboards with them. Herb Gary, Billy Bowers, Frankie Cambria. And then we also played at there was a bar further up on the same side of the street called the Flamingo Bar. And it was a long, skinny bar. And there was a stage right on the street. I mean, if you looked in the window, you'd be looking at the backs of the band. They were up on that stage. Now, it was a tiny little stage. The band was up there with a Hammond B3 organ, drums and everything else, and 5 singers. On that tiny little stage, you couldn't move. And you're trying to do some moves, you'd fall off the stage. And I'll never forget Don Walker. One of the few things I remember from that night was he was playing the Hammond B3, doing Ray Charles' What I Say, and singing it. And it was kicking. And I can't remember exactly who else was on stage, but I'm sure it was Frankie Cambria and Herb Gary, because they backed us up at the Melody Bar. So it was probably the same guys, but I'll never forget that because Don played that song, and for some reason it stuck with me. But that's the kind of stuff that went on in Reading. There were places to play. And then, of course, afterwards, we'd go down and sing on the street corner, start singing doo-wop at Sixth and Penn.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And people would know that was happening, and you know, you'd
Get a crowd.
you'd get a little crowd going on. And there was a song by the Persuasions, "Looking for an Echo," and that's what you did when you were singing doo-wop. You were looking for a place to sing to get an echo. And those guys, so we would go in those long hallways when they had the dresses and things in the windows as you'd go in, remember?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we would go in there and the harmony would be echoing.
There's still
in
some
there.
shops on Penn Street that still
Yeah.
have those little.
And
Yeah.
the Persuasions actually did a song about that, looking for an echo. And what was I going to say? We actually got to sing with the Persuasions one time. Those guys are my heroes. They're the best a cappella group there ever was. The Persuasions. And after Tally and the Hustlers, then there was a while where I wasn't singing. I went back to work. And I always kept singing. Wherever I could, I'd sit in, you know, but I never stopped singing. But then the Pretenders called me one day in 1993 it was, that they asked me if I would get back together with them to open the show. There was a big oldies show at the Scenic River Days in 1993. Mm-hmm. Somebody got in touch with one of the Pretenders, I don't know who, and asked if we could get back together to open that show. It was the Platters, the Skyliners, the Del Vikings. God, a great group they were. And it was a big rock and roll show. And they called me and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I said, "On one condition, that you guys, we're going to rehearse and kill them. If you're not serious, then I don't want to bother, you know." And they said, yeah. So we got together. We had 2 or 3 months to rehearse, and we got together as often as we could, and we worked out a really good set. And we came out and kicked ass. I mean, because, you know, all the other groups were doing it every night, and you lose the edge.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing for 3 months, and we were chomping at the bit. When we hit that stage, it was like open the floodgates. It was so much energy. I'll never forget that night. We tore it up. And then that was it. Now, everybody wanted us to sing again, here and sing here and sing here. So, okay. So we wound up singing at the Evergreen Club with the Duprees. And I think we sang there maybe twice, or we started singing with other groups like the Duprees here and there. And then we did a show at the Stokesay Castle for, it was celebrating Shorty Long, or his wife, Dolly. And it was a big show. We put on a really big show. We did an a cappella set. Then we had a band. We did a whole set, and there was some other people involved. And at that point, that group was from the Pretenders. When I left, it was Al Coleman, Jerry Prentice, Mickey Diana, and Billy Uhas was playing guitar with us. He went way back in the 50s with bands too. And then Danny Wisniewski, which he died, he was the second tenor. So he's the only one that died. The rest of us are still alive. So we played from 1993 to 1995, and it was like starting over again. We were all singing everywhere. And then I left the group sometime in late 95, 96, and then I just went back to what I was doing. I